Hi everyone, I'm Perry. Today Eddie Stone, founder and CEO of Touchstone Essential, is with us. Hello Eddie.
Hi, Perry. So nice to be with you this week.
Nice to be with you too. What happened to you, Eddie?
Well, it's a little bit embarrassing, but I was hanging out with my kids and some friends of mine. We had actually attended a football game, and we were sort of waiting for the traffic to disperse out of the stadium. And we were messing around, and one of the guys had a skateboard, and I got on it, and I had a fall, and I had a pretty serious fall. And I've ridden skateboards my whole life. Anyway, I don't need to explain that part, but it's super embarrassing. But I dislocated my elbow, sort of hit my eye and my head, my lip, and dislocated my elbow, which was really painful. I don't think I've experienced something like that before. I've been pretty active my whole life and never really had an accident of this source. And so dislocated my elbow and my humerus. I had a little bit of a compound fracture there, and so I wound up spending a couple days in the hospital. And I am a right-handed person, and it happened to my right arm, and so I have been limited to just my left hand and hunting and pecking. So for anybody that sent me an email and you've gotten really slow and simple responses, it's because I am terrible. I'm getting better, but terrible with my left hand. So anyway, that's what sort of got in the way of my activities last week, and I really regret we missed doing our show. But I do appreciate everybody's patience, and for those that had heard about this that reached out with their kind words, thank you. I'm completely on the mend, and things will be fine. And just probably my ego is probably more damaged than anything else for embarrassing myself with the fall. But this is part of life.
Uh-huh. So I hope you get better and better very soon, Eddie.
Thank you. I'm on the mend for sure.
Uh-huh. So Eddie, since you are not here, for last week, so I may start the question now.
Yes, please go ahead.
I've been waiting for a week now. Okay, from Marjo's Setcher. Is it okay for a pregnant woman to take zeolite?
Well, from a regulation standpoint, we cannot advocate for someone that's pregnant or nursing to really use any supplements. There's pretty strong regulation, just simply because there's a lot of unknowns. And of course, when someone's pregnant or breastfeeding, you want to be very, very cautious. But we do know that there are plenty of people that are using our zeolite product and other supplements that become pregnant. And for a lot of them, they continue to use them. I hope that most of them talk with their physicians to make sure their physicians understand what they're doing, and then continue to use the supplements, including the zeolites, while nursing. And I've worked in this category for 30 some years and with zeolite since 2005, and I've never heard of any kind of issues. I've seen registered nurses as well as PAs, physician's assistants, and doctors advocate to continue using. So we can't give that advice to people, and we encourage them always to speak with their physicians and take a really conservative approach. But I've never heard of any dangers associated with it. So that's really the position we have to take because of just the regulations that are out there.
Uh-huh. So just to reassure, so someone who have been using zeolite before pregnant is okay too, and then when she's pregnant,
we've never seen any kind of issues whatsoever, and so that makes me feel good about it. On a personal level, of course, my wife and I were well past the age of having children, but if my wife were using it, which she does, and became pregnant, we wouldn't stop. But that's based upon our comfort and what we know about it. And so people have to make individual decisions, but I haven't seen anything that makes me worry if that's the circumstance.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, still have people who doesn't understand because they read the article about zeolite, and then they're not comfortable with. Could you please explain about this one more time?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. And maybe if it's okay, I know we were going to speak about breast cancer, but maybe we can shift that subject to next week. October in the U.S. and maybe other countries as well is a month where we really focus on issues associated with breast cancer. And so we'll still have the chance to do that next week if that's okay with you. And I actually pulled together some notes because you had been kind enough to forward me the question. And it seems to me there's some confusion out there. And part of it is that when a person goes on the web, and all these people make these websites, they can look really like they have a lot of authority, but I just encourage people to really be discerning or cautious about what they read and look for verifiable information and look for consistency on credible websites. Because when I read myself about zeolites, I see a lot of misstatements and a lot of things that would probably make me concerned. And so what I thought I would do is I would just talk about some key points and our approach. And then people can certainly, they just need to decide on what's important for them or how to approach it. But here's sort of the way I want to tackle this. And that is basically say, okay, why Pure Body? Let's start with our basic product, Pure Body. And, why we have tens of thousands of people that use this on a regular basis all around, not just the US, but around the world, right? And a lot of great results. And so the question is really, why? And then let's compare and contrast that with other zeolites. And zeolites is a very specific subject matter, right? It's a very specific mineral that we're talking about. There are probably 50 some, right at 50 natural zeolites. They fall into three categories. There's globule, spicule, and then sheet-like. What we know has been most used by human beings for hundreds, if not thousands of years, going back to clay-eating societies, is sheet-like zeolites, particularly clinoptilolite, which is what we use. That's where we have the most data, not a synthetic or an artificial or any other one. We just know the most about clinoptilolite. There may be some advantages to the others, but this is what I take a conservative approach because I'm not just advocating this as a business or a company. Myself and my family, we use these products, we believe in them. And so I take a conservative approach. And so the real question then is, well, why aren't all zeolites the same? And so let me just kind of give you an idea of why, frankly, Pure Body works more effectively than most products. And so first thing is to realize that the zeolite is a natural mineral, but it's not a nutritional mineral. So need to make a distinction about it being like calcium, magnesium, or something like iron or potassium. It's not the same in that regard. So it's not utilized by the body or broken down or ingested really sort of in the same way. The zeolite's fundamental advantage is it's an ion exchanger. And so this is really the critical idea to kind of get in mind if you're trying to develop an understanding of the mechanics of, okay, how does this thing really work in my body? And so, and that's really what the strong advantage of and what it can provide in terms of benefits for people, because it essentially, in sort of a simple summary, it will exchange positive minerals like potassium, magnesium, for calcium for things that you don't want in your body, lead, mercury, arsenic. And so it sort of gives away a good mineral and takes back inside itself or attaches to its surface these bad heavy metals that we know can damage DNA and have a real negative effect on our body. And so one of the things, though, to keep in mind is that not every zeolite is the same. And so one of the things you want to look for, this is the protocol I use, is, and I do actually this with everything I do, I look for lab results to verify, the safety, the cleanliness, and sort of the detail of what I'm putting in my body. So lab testing is important. And so when I talk about it being an exchanger, let me give you an example that I think most people listening would probably be familiar with. Most people have heard of antioxidants before, right? Antioxidants are those beneficial nutritional substances that we find in fruits and vegetables. One of the reasons why you're probably given by the grandparents or elderly people in your family, wise people, I'll call them, to eat your fruits and vegetables and not just eat snacks and not just eat meats and proteins. And that's because antioxidants also are exchangers, and they exchange a good ion for a bad ion with what's called a free radical. Free radicals is a bad ion or molecule in the body, can damage DNA, cause illness, can make you age faster. And so if you can kind of think about it that way, it's an exchanger as well. And when it makes that exchange, it neutralizes that free radical. Well, in a somewhat similar way, that's how the zeolite performs in the body. As an ion exchanger, it exchanges back out potassium, calcium, magnesium. And I'm going to come back to that in some detail because it's sort of important there, because you can't just assume every zeolite has that inside its cage. It exchanges that for the heavy metals, environmental pollutants that we don't want in our body. So hopefully that on the sort of surface area, think about it as an ion exchanger, and think about it in the same way you might think about how an antioxidant works inside the body. And here's what's great about it. If you free up the body of these pesticides, volatile organics, and heavy metals, you're going to have more energy because you're debrising the body, so to speak, right? And so you'll rest better, you'll think better, you'll sleep better. Just all these sort of systems work in the body more effectively. And so that's why when you have a good, proper zeolite and people use it, really get these great results. Conversely, if you've got a poorly prepared zeolite and people use it because it's essentially ineffective in the body, they don't get the results. And so I'll give you a sort of a lay example that I use. I think about it if I were trying to clean a spill or debris up on a countertop and I had a dirty sponge. Well, all I would really be doing, I mean, it's still a sponge, right? A dirty sponge and a clean sponge, there's both sponges. So I think of a dirty zeolite and a clean zeolite, they're both zeolites. However, one sponge cleans up the spill, soaks up the spill, and the other one does not because it's dirty. And so that's sort of the way that you want to think about it. Now, where does the lab testing come into this? And for anybody that's listening that wants to see an example of this, you can go to our website. Perry's always good about posting a link inside the section here on this on the YouTube channel. But if you go there and you say go to our shop page and you go to Pure Body, you also see this for Pure Body Extra, but we're talking about Pure Body right now. As you scroll down, you can see access to third-party lab results that demonstrate what I'm talking about. But when you look at the labs, and we've got some explanation there, but let me give you some explanation about what you see. The first thing to understand is that the zeolite itself, that molecule, is called a hydrated aluminum silicate. And so what does that mean? That essentially means that it's made of aluminum and silicon. And when people hear aluminum, they maybe have some reserve or some caution, right? Because you don't want free aluminum running around inside the body. Here's what's super important to realize. Those elements do not break down in the body. They are just simply a part of that structure. So let me just repeat this. They cannot, under any circumstances, break down in the body. We do not have the chemical capacity to break it down. We don't have the heat to break it down in our body. There's just no way, 100% I can tell you, based upon chemistry and science, it cannot break down in the body. And so from the zeolite structure as an aluminum silicate, you do not have to have any worry about that breaking down and creating access to a free aluminum in the body. It's just simply impossible for that to occur. So when you look at it, though, on the test and you see that as a part of the results, here's what you need to know. We use a specialty, it's a common acid, a specialty acid that's utilized in this type of testing to break down the molecule so that for scientific reasons, we can look inside the cage to see what's there. And so a part of the results you will see is that there's aluminum and silicon in there. That's because those elements literally have been broken apart so that individually we can analyze what's in the cage. That's the way that we're able to determine when we get raw zeolite what its contents are, and then when we clean the zeolite, what the contents are. So that's how we're able to know we've cleaned the zeolite and freed it of extraneous heavy metals or environmental pollutants that it's picked up in nature. And so if you're using a zeolite product that has not been cleaned and it was to be tested in this manner and broken down, what you would find is that you would find these extraneous volatile organics, heavy metals, pesticides, arsenic, lead, cadmium, mercury. You would find those things there. And in that case, then that it would inhibit it from cleaning the body because it's all cages are already full. And so this ion exchange that we're looking for would not be available. So that's where the purity of that zeolite being cleaned really comes into play. That's what we're trying to find. And so that's sort of the first thing to understand about the lab results. The second thing is when you look at the lab results, you're going to see that there is magnesium, potassium, and calcium. That's the post results, not the raw original, but what happens after we've cleaned the product. That's because in the process of cleaning the zeolite, those cages, because it's an ion exchanger, it has to have something inside the cage. The cage sort of functionally from a chemistry standpoint cannot be empty. It cannot be maintained as a vacuum because it's a charge. It has to have an ion in there. So when we are cleaning it, and sometimes if you've listened to me, I call it we tease it in the process. We use a variety of heat exchanges, and basically it's kind of cooking it for quite a few days to sort of clean it out. As we're trying to purge out the bad, we're flooding it with the good. In this case, it's calcium, magnesium, potassium principally that we're working with. Now, it's important to note that the amount that in this process that winds up being exchanged in the body during this ion exchange is not enough to refer to it as a dietary source or a nutritional source of calcium, magnesium, and potassium. It's not that. This is just simply a part of giving it the ability to exchange more effectively in the body. The way it actually, from an efficiency standpoint, which is really quite fascinating for me, the size and the charge of calcium, potassium, magnesium is good enough to fill the cage, but it's not preferred. So it's great because when the zeolite goes in the body and it would see an arsenic or lead or cadmium or mercury, it goes, oh my gosh, I'd rather have that, right? I mean, there's not a dialogue, but it would rather have that. And so it more freely exchanges the calcium, magnesium, potassium for the negative things in there, the heavy metals. And so in that regard, it's really great because it has that affinity. So that's the sort of the second thing to look at when you think about the labs, and it's explained on the labs. The other thing is that when we're confirming for that sort of purity, right, which is really critical, it's all about sort of recognizing, even setting aside this issue of not wanting to have heavy metals in your body, it's all about preparing it so that it's effective in the body. So started out this presentation talking about, why Pure Body works and some products don't. This is really the fundamentals of it. If it's dirty, it's inefficient in the body. If it's clean and prepared, it's efficient in the body and has the ability to do this. And so that's sort of the characteristics of what you see with the lab results. Understanding the zeolite a little more, and I mentioned this in the beginning, so let's kind of go back to this. So I said that it's not a nutritional mineral like iron or potassium, magnesium, calcium that we've been talking about. And that's because the zeolite will not dissolve in the body in water or fat. It's not fat or water soluble. And so when we eat, the foods we eat, they're either water soluble or fat soluble. So that's how our body breaks them down and creates a form that's then absorbable and usable from a nutritional standpoint. And nutrition falls into sort of three macro categories: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. We're all really familiar with that. And then there's micronutrients. And so this is where we talk about the nutritional density of foods and that kind. All of that stuff can be broken down by the body because it's water or fat soluble. And so just to be clear, because I know this has been a question we've had before, will the zeolite break down in the body? Will it stay in the body? It cannot be held by the body. The body will not absorb it, and so it's going to be evacuated either through your bowel or through urine. And so that's really what you want, though, right? And so that's the critical nature. Now, in preparing it to be effective in the body, so cleaning it that we've been talking about, that's one thing. The next thing to consider is sizing the product. Because zeolites, when found in nature, right, when they're mined, they're sort of large bodies of rocks, let's refer to it as. And now the mining process takes place. And this is really critical because this is where it becomes quite specialized. And most of what you see on the marketplace today is, say, 40 microns plus. So let me give you some sort of dynamics to think about. And when you look at our test results, what you're going to see is that Pure Body is listed as 0.409 microns in size. And so that's sort of the average size of that molecule. You'll see a chart that shows you the tops, the highs, and the lows of that. But that's sort of the spectrum of size. But the size average there is 0.409. Well, with most of the products on the marketplace being 40 microns plus, right? This is the ones that are in powdered form that you can buy, and I mean, literally, you can take a tablespoon of it. They're too large to do anything but sort of like fiber almost sort of scraping through the gut. The problem is if they're in a powder form, then they haven't been cleaned, because once you clean them and they become wet or hydrated with water, and now they really can't be reversed. You might even imagine this. So at 0.409 in terms of size, let me give you a relative size there. A blood cell, a single white blood cell, is 25 microns in size. So we're talking about being significantly smaller than even a typical white blood cell in the body, or 100 times smaller than the 40 micron size of the powdered zeolites that you see in the marketplace, which essentially are not really going to be effective. There may be a modest impact on health, maybe a modest impact on gut bacteria, but what you really want is something that's smaller, that can have not just an impact on the gut, but can also be small enough to evacuate the gut and get into the soft tissues and the bloodstream. Because if you've got toxins in your body, they're not just confined to the gut. They get into your cells, they get into the bloodstream, they go all throughout the body, they even get into your bones, and it can cause brittle bones, all kinds of other health issues. And so this is why this detox, what you really want is for it to be effective at not just in the gut area, but in the remainder of the body. And then maybe a couple other things I had in my notes that I wanted to share is that, and we're talking about Pure Body here, right? Pure Body Extra. Now you're talking about a nano-sized particle, smaller still, and we can say that for another discussion for another day, but it's in nano range. Now we're talking about a whole different level of cellular access in the body. But the bottom line is, when we make it small, it also has an impact on the surface area. And now I'll admit, for me, when I first started learning this aspect of the science behind it, it wasn't completely clear what that actually constituted. But I think I've got a good example to give everybody. So if you ever used a lint roller, right? I think probably the world over, right? We've all seen and used lint rollers. Generally, it's almost like a little plastic spool with tape, sort of just reversing the sticky side out. And so your lint roller can pretty quickly, my daughter's has come home for some work, and so she's with us here for a couple of months before she heads back to New York where she lives, and she's brought her cat with her. And the cat will obviously shed, and so we keep a lint roller handy, right? If you got any kind of dark clothes on or jeans on, you get a little cat hair on there. And so you take the lint roller and you roll it, it gets the lint, cat hair, whatever it happens to be. Well, it doesn't take long before that lint roller isn't effective because it's filled. All that surface area has been filled with things that it's picked up. And so what do? You take a sheet off and the lint roller is new again. Well, if you think about the space that lint roller occupies, it's a pretty small space. But if you were to take all the sheets on the lint roller and lay them out, I mean, they might cover an entire living room floor, right? Depends on how big the lint roller happens to be. The zeolite really is the same way. By milling it and getting it to such a small size, it occupies a small space as it enters the body, but it provides this massive surface area that's better than if it was just a large molecule. So that 100 times smaller translates into a surface area that's exponentially larger than 100 times, because all we're able to do with the laser measurements that we do, we're only able really to measure the exterior portion of the sphere itself, right? So it's not taking into account all of those inner channels and chambers that are native to that zeolite. So the surface area is exponentially increased. And so that's why even just a modest dose of 3 or 4 drops 3 times per day can have such a profound impact on the body, because those small molecules provide a surface area that's almost, wow, it's almost mind-blowing what it can do, right? And you're talking about heavy metals that are angstrom in size. Now you're talking something even smaller still than nanometer ranges. And so their capacity to attach those to the surface, put them inside the chambers, is fascinating in this ion exchange and incredibly effective. And so when people use it, you know, what happens is they feel better. They've got clarity, better clarity. They're sleeping better. They're recovering from physical activity better. I've been aggressive about using it with my arm. And in fact, a heavy dose of that, you know, because anesthesia being in surgery, right? I don't feel good about having that in my body. And then also using some calm on the surface has helped me heal quicker from a bruising standpoint, sort of ahead of the pace of what the physician thought, and the physical trainer that's helping me recover. And so I'm a big advocate. And I realize that, I mean, we've talked about a lot of details, but I know you have a sophisticated audience. You have some smart people that are listening to this show. They're reading online and they're working hard to sort of understand what they put in their body. And hey, people want to be aware as consumers, and they're spending their hard-earned money on, you know, various brands. And so that's why we want to be incredibly transparent, try to explain the science as much as we can. Go to the website, pull up the page, on the shop page. We've also got some blog articles, but the real detail is on that shop page. And as you drill down a little bit, you'll see various tabs on reviews, benefits, the science, and then there's links out to third-party, peer-reviewed, verifiable articles about the product and why it works. And then you'll also see our labs and then an explanation of those labs, because I believe once you really understand that product and how effective it can be, it's very cost-effective. I mean, it's depends on if you're buying it at the subscription price or the retail price, but you're talking about roughly $1 a day to have this kind of health assurance and aid in helping to detox. And unfortunately, there's no way to get away from toxins, right? In the air, water, food supply. Most that have been following our show know we've been talking about hurricanes. We unfortunately got another hurricane rolling through North Carolina right now, Michael, and all that's done is just really caused massive flooding, obviously the wind damage and other things, massive flooding and pollution into the water systems. And so, you know, it's just difficult to get away from it. And just like you got to have a strategy of how you eat and sleep and exercise and manage stress and all these other things, I think you got to have a strategy about detox, right? That's why this is part of our approach to business and health. So, Perry, thank you for this format to explain that. For those that thought this was too detailed, I apologize. We're just trying to address those that really want to understand. And we'll continue. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to submit them. We'll continue to answer them. We've got some nice FAQs on the site that can answer some. And so anyway, hope that helps and addresses some of those issues.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much, Eddie, for the clear answer. So if anybody has any question, can send us here, can send me here. And if they have questions, they can also contact your support team too, right?
Yeah, that's right. We have, they can use email, but there's also during the operational hours that are listed on the website, they can use the chat feature to access. And so it's, you know, we understand people want to know what they're putting in their bodies and they want to understand the value, and we're happy to do our best to help them develop that understanding and confidence.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, we have a few minutes. I would like to read this from Marilyn Collimans for you.
Yeah.
I wanted you, to share with Eddie for our experience with CBD oil. My husband had a knee replacement last week and has been using the CBD oil for pain and anti-inflammatory swelling. It has been working great. My mother and best friend are registered nurse and feel that it is a good option. Thank you, and I really enjoy your show.
Oh, that's very nice. I appreciate them taking the time to share that. I think our CBD oil, one of the most gratifying products we've ever worked with, because it just you can relieve people's pain, help them recover faster. I've actually become more of a testimonial than I wanted to be with my little accident. It's just remarkable. In my own regard, so after my surgery, the doctor gave me pretty heavy narcotics and things I could use for pain. But once I left the hospital, I only just used the calm. I actually used a tincture about every 4 hours for the first several days. And I could still feel it, but it helped me manage the pain. And so I didn't have to put those other things inside my body. And so I appreciate that. And the other stories we're hearing about the product, it's great to work with. It's a lot of fun.
Okay, Eddie, thank you very much for today. We see
Thank
you
you.
next week. Okay, next week.
We will be here next week.
Okay. And thank you for watching Tomorrow Awaken Hidden Truth with Scott Lemrell. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.